Amongst every eternity, there exists a piece of media release that far surpasses anything ever seen before, a singular once-in-a-lifetime experience that cannot be described as the terms for them are yet to be invented, something that would be considered a tragedy if it were not to be treated with the acclaim it deserves. Its creator, a human in theory and an alien in reality. These are legends that define where a generation ends and another one begins. However, I am now declaring a state of emergency as I am currently burdened with the knowledge that there has been released a Geometry Dash level of such high importance that upon its discovery I feel that I am morally obligated to share it with you all. And as I'm aware, I'm one of the few that have ever seen it. This critically endangered level I'm talking about is outside a zone by higher Derrid, and I fear that without your help it'll soon become extinct. The year is 1958 and your bitch whore of a wife insists that she should be allowed to be let outside. Not today, Jezebel. You're off to work at Big Missus Incorporated to have a meeting with the finest minds in the great state of Mississippi about trying to figure out why women are so gosh darn upset all day, and you have no time for her commie nonsense. While you have a little ponder to yourself about Barbara's lunacy, you're appreciating the grey skies and good times from the back of your old trusty station wagon. Fag in the hand and a grimace in the soul. You've been hard at work for a good few months now. That promotion is more competitive than the Olympics, and it's the only remaining thing separating you between the sweet sounds of the hardboard floors of the finest estate $500 could offer. It's been taking a real toll on your poor old working man's heart, but the thought of your family's future being secured is enough to keep you going. Your old man served 15 years in the trenches and didn't become double-blinded in the Great War just for his hippie-ass son to quit right at the finish line. Well, looks like you're out of gas. These old buggers barely go for about 10 inches before spinning out and demanding more tar juice, so it's hardly a surprise. These days it's become less of an annoyance and rather a familiar comedy added to your schedule. You scan the horizon to find that there's a pump just a block over. There's a standard procedure in the middle of fucking nowhere. No problem, you've been here before. Pump's closed. Huh? Workers have been on strike for about 3 days now. No one's going to be going nowhere till either they get tired of complaining or the sun eats us for breakfast because that oil price ain't going down. Your previously relaxed walk slows to a paralyzing standstill. The boss is expecting you in no more than 15 minutes. That man is ruthless. If Granddad's station wagon isn't getting you to that building, then your income is no more. Your grimace quickly turns into lingering defeat. Hey. You want some? All of these foreign objects are completely unrecognizable to your simple monkey brain. You know deep down inside you exactly what you're about to do, but your pounding headache is only getting louder. There's not enough time. You don't think. As time goes on, the more apparent it becomes that the advent of psychedelia inside our fragile little pathetic meatheads is as close as humanity has ever come to creating art too. It took off like a rocket in the 60s, and by the end of the decade it established itself as the decade's swirliest cultural export. Everyone was suddenly not shutting the fuck up about how epic these funny leaves were, and black people were temporarily almost allowed to exist for a while. Successful writers of the time like Allen Iverson and Peter Dinklage were spreading the word about how groovy everything was, which in an honest retrospect wasn't exactly true. The 60s were positively not a time saturated with exclusively good things, but most of the bad things resembled this, so might as well forget it via drug-induced amnesia if it meant that reality was mostly composed of things that get you inspired to line up in the queue and do backflips off of the World Trade Center. Good mates, postmodernism and surrealism enter the minds of the public in full force just in time for your grandma to trip balls and get gingerly fingered behind some bushes. While the possibility of entering psychosis was scary, the fear of losing an opportunity to piss off their dad was scarier. Old man Jenkins' centuries of authority was no match for a bunch of smelly people that were too busy beta testing the early alpha build of LSD Dream Emulator inside of a shoddily cobbled together museum that would eventually burst into flames by accident during the 1980s. Colors are infinite, and the only thing that matters is my desire for everyone else in God's green flat earth to feel what it's like to take every drug at once in the form of listening to the brainwave noises produced by these four weird British guys. Hope you like wiggly fractals because you aren't getting rid of them. This is your life now. Have so much fun that you fucking die. See you later, dumbass. This was the defining activity of the decade that didn't involve shooting foreign fellas in the dick. and actually had a lot to do with the enlightenment and spirituality and the connection of the land and the complexion of the Zulu love and whatever, but people don't remember that because thinking is dumb and boring. Also, I don't know what the fuck the electric Kool-Aid test is about, but I found it, and that book title is way too fucking cool for me to not share. This counterculture is what divided the 20th century in two, from the eras of old bitches falling over while mowing lawns and the painfully slow collapse of society. And it also marks the point in history where colour goes from barely existing at all to being completely ubiquitous in everyday life, when it was successfully invented in 1966 by famous chef Dr. Jonathan Hendricks. His second most notable invention, just behind of course the classic recipes for his extremely delicious voodoo chili, as well as its slightly spicier sequel. The psychedelia movement lasted well throughout the 70s and beyond, and eventually morphed into various things, like a trillion actual things. None of it relates to Geometry Dash unfortunately, as despite popular misconception, the game did not actually come out in the 60s. As we can tell by looking at his comments, Robtop is at least a minimum of 150 years old and could have totally done it, but in 1967 he unfortunately came down with a tragic case of being a little bitch, so 2013 it was. Even more tragically, when the man finally did remember how to paste the Impossible Games code into that year's edition of shithole coding software, the game didn't come with the industry standard ketamine mode, which is very upsetting for people like me who play Square games specifically for that feature. Yet the game still continues to survive till this very day, even though that it says Ketamine Dash on the box. Something that people seem to often forget is the fact that at its core, Geometry Dash is still a mobile game from 2013, which was born from the mobile equivalent of going into someone's house and then absorbing their lungs. If you look at the original 7 levels from back in the day, you'll find a bunch of rectangles, which when it comes to representing the game gets less and less accurate as time goes on. When releasing the dumbest thing since sliced tables, Robtop did not have the foresight to predict anything more complicated than this. This was not an engine built for the next 6-year-old, let alone the next Van Gogh. That didn't stop people from trying, and failing really badly. Over the years, so many people approached the Sisyphean task of taking this big pile of dirt crudely chucked together by some Swedish guy in an afternoon and turning it into something that hosts a ginormous interconnected web of artists excitedly sharing their own personal creations that they most likely made in a basement. Next to the golf clubs, most of them being completely detached from illegal drugs in any way, as almost all the people playing mobile games in 2013 when 9-year-olds their only knew substances as the things from the scary videos their teachers showed them in assemblies that make people's heads explode. Except for the Lightning Road portal cluster, there was no place in Geometry Dash designed specifically for the purposes of ripping up some ketamine. That doesn't mean that they had no effect though. Despite what you may think, there's something very important that heroin junkies and annoying piece of shit iPad kids have in common. That is that they both love looking at pretty colours and or nonsense. If you've got at least 85% of the Roy G. Biv in front of their face, you can now rest easy as they are now legally not allowed to move for the next 3 hours. The Summer of Love was not known by the youth of 2014, however, Funny Game ruled over the entire fucking world, so when he tried it out one time, everyone immediately did it once realizing just how fun it was. At this time, people really got the hang out of how to make the most of their 4 color slots, and by the end of the pre-2.0 era, creators made some of the best levels to ever exist. And they also made this. When looking back on it in this instance compared to real life, ROTD as Revolver and 509 Circles ripoffs formed together to take the role of the greatest shit to David Boone Depression Hour. Simple optical illusions would be used constantly and people had a great time rolling their eyes every time they saw the equalizer effect play over some fat rat. When it comes to a complex experience that comes anywhere near the good vibrations of the good vibrations, our favourite autismophrenics were closer than ever before. By this point the visuals were all there and all they had was the atmosphere left to go. One that is proven to be hard to recreate without going through this. Even with all the elements required to put everything together, the absurd yet well-contained surrealism that makes psychedelia feel so free and spiritual to the human soul, or whatever bullshit Sign of the Times is about, was partly inaccessible, especially since most of the levels in this niche were burdened by the creator soundtracking them with the worst dubstep you've ever heard in your life. Stuff that'll make Burial cry. I'm talking about the shit that was designed to go over 3D Minecraft usernames. Except for Sweet Dude, who nearly got there all the way past the finish line of big boy quality at one point, but I refuse to count this as a win for personal reasons I do not want to discuss. Flash forward to the late 2010s, and we finally start to see people making true neo-psychedelia as a few levels begin to pop up out of nowhere from Satan's dick that are almost entirely composed of out-of-context nonsense. For once, the 2010s meta-irony has a use, and gave us a bunch of guys with names that sound like mystic frog diseases and call their levels things like dick juice. At this point in the decade, memes are super abstract, surreal, anti-poetic nightmares, and this inevitably leaked into the Geometry Dash world in the form of these intellectually advanced shitposts. By this point, if you played this video at the average Geometry Dash level to your grandma out of context, you would probably fucking explode, because I put a block of C4 inside of her dentures. Nothing means anything anymore, and all that matters is my desire to become Schrodinger's cat in real life. As the 2020s rolled into existence with the force of a trillion lions, fully formed psychedelia began to slowly emerge more often as an idea that more people wanted to try out for themselves. Big-time voices in the Jones community like Pharoah, who just happened to be quite well connected with the creating underground weirdos who couldn't get enough of dabbling in the joys of mysterious shit, exercised the only good perk about being an influencer by sharing it to the normies. This was the year when people who willingly watched these monstrosities considered less polished gameplay and decoration concepts, which in the grand scheme of things weren't all that unconventional, but compared to something like this feels several magnitudes more like taking your great-granddad's special gummy bears, a bit like Goldilocks if it was secretly about the visual effects of swallowing $600 worth of opioids. Unlike the Babingus' special surprise box set from 2 years prior, the community was much more accepting of this new wave of experiments, establishing exactly how much abstraction the kids could handle at once, which was somewhere around a little ditty known as Cold Sweat, which you may remember for being really fucking annoying. The fruits of the revival were eventually opaquely endorsed by the big man-child upstairs himself, when Germany's Supreme Chancellor and Dictator Rob Thomas made fan-favourite Snail-approved Motivation by Rock Wizard 5 an official weekly demon in October for 25% of that specific October, which I know is not interesting, but I know an unnecessarily large amount of things about the symbol that I play too much, which I shall not disclose the true size of in order to not cause you intense emotional discomfort that'll make you probably cry and call me really mean names. However, hiding it from you is probably insignificant at the end of the day, because nothing I know or could describe to you personally could ever prepare you for what you're about to see. The Outsider Zone begins with a strange purple realm made entirely of solid colours and jagged lines. All this forms structures that are clearly made for something yet are completely alien in design. There is geometry forming symbols and letters which are completely indecipherable and translate to nothing. As time goes on, they get harder to understand and resemble everything. The Outsider Zone will never give you an explanation, as in the context of this world, this fucko shit is normal, and to the people that inhabit this land will be like someone from Earth feeling the need to explain what sand is. There are hundreds of black-coated blue orbs and diverging lines which seem to serve no purpose to the environment around it, yet are still required for its traversal. The only recognizable structures are caged within the black mess as facades in negative space. There are giant objects in random formation which glow rainbow colors and abstract patterns for reasons unknown to us puny trespassers, who are going to soon be fucked just like this high guy, trapped forever inside this one spot. One of the only identifiable things we will end up seeing in our journey throughout this realm, surrounded by the ever-changing gradient hellscape that we are yet to realize the danger of. The next movement reveals black and white lines arranged on a harsh misanthropic trail which we now slide upon as we admire the absurdity that there is a creator out there who leaves this terrible looking in-game glow activated on purpose just to fuck with me and the 4 other guys who know what that is. More abstract gradients affect everything that there is to be seen. The in reality dark block frames made entirely out of death get washed out by the world's slowest laser show. Everything you've seen before is starting to combine in a way that is entirely unnatural. As you see a red X in front of you, the thought of something being recognizable to your frail human meat brain returns for a short moment, only for it to be quickly taken away as a billion more appear, as well as these extremely unblended black glow streaks whose mission is unknown. You've now been teleported to Lion Windmill Silhouette Rainbow Square Land where you must climb Big Hill. The strange mass of orb snakes returns once more, and I strongly regret wasting 40 minutes of my life trying to understand what these letters mean. This anxious guy's face is the last thing you see before entering the point of no return. Everything collides at once. You clumsily attempt to best this overworldly architecture as you begin to realize why this little dude was feeling uneasy about the stability of the Outsider Zone he's currently suspended inside. Everything is traveling fast and slowly at the same time. The awkward glow saws return gayer than ever, and before you know it, you've left the Outsider Zone's grasp as you ride away from the madness on the world's longest astral click. So suddenly that you didn't have time to notice a true incredible number of psychedelic effects laid on top of each other which combine to create it. A dense sandstorm covers your vision. Whatever previous life inhabited this area seemed to not care for it that much because it's clearly in disarray. I would comment further, but considering whoever was last here wrote the word silence on everything a million times, I have a hunch that the mysterious sand people that throw spikes everywhere probably didn't want us to. This entire deserted area is merely just a pit stop between one dimension to another, which a defective orb sends us falling towards. The second Outsider Zone is revealed to be just as unfriendly to understandable cohesion than the last. Nothing in this place connects. The colors slowly boil in a uniform manner which hits your eyes like a gun aimed at your funny bone. There are no curves to be found in this realm. Even the hills made out of strange tessellated objects which line darkened area, secretly just a bunch of jagged squares in a trench coat attempting to mimic what they think is an arc. The only non-square thing to be seen is the line of stars that curve in such an extreme way that even attempting to follow its path is only a suicide mission that leaves you to die in the land of spinning gradients. Yet another unfollowable path suddenly drops you into a new location without warning, which has many elements that appear to be fighting each other for who can be the most intrusive to the environment around it. Hieroglyphics can be seen in purple depicting what we're currently doing, which is very helpful just in case you suddenly become so dumb that you forget the single thing that you do in this game. You attempt to exit the zone for a final time, but it's no use as the clusterfuck has leaked into what would otherwise be a normal tundra. What was once a city housing precious life has been entirely consumed by the outsider zone and has been reduced to just a few street lamps that only serve to illuminate the many spikes that lay below. The regular world as we know it has been corrupted thoroughly down to every inch. There's no turning back. Hey. You good, man? Not sure. Dude, you were out for a while, man. I think I know what you've got. I reckon one of these should get you back to speed. What does it do, though? What the hell is this thing? Don't worry about it, man. You'll be back to reality in no time. At this point, it's painfully clear you've ventured way too far out into the outsider zone. Anything that was previously explainable has turned into every dream you've ever had, combined with the pseudomonous whirlpool of vibrant chaos. Multiple glowing block designs are unorganically stacked on top of each other and seem to only exist to obstruct your path and clip through things that they shouldn't be allowed to normally reach. Soon the level fails to even keep the objects within the structure it sets itself. The spikes are smothered with rectangular stripes which awkwardly stray outside the lines, like the drawing that your mum refused to put on the fridge. Dual sections are found which showcase this evil energy building up as you slowly reach the far outsides of the zone. By the time you reach the penultimate stretch of the outsider zone's territory, a small nebula is seen forming in the background, which if you think about it for a minute either means that these clouds are fucking gigantic or it means that the Milky Way galaxy is actually tiny as hell. But you have no time to ponder this probably important question as you are quickly thrusted away from the outsider zone, exiting the realm with even less knowledge of what you just experienced than you had before you came in.
Are you under the influence of any drugs or alcohol?
Let me check.
Hey! Why spend Christmas Eve waiting for some extra fat white dude to come?
One very dangerous thing out there is drugs. Drugs are very, very bad for you, whether they be weed, crack, cocaine, meth, or any of that not radical stuff.
Chances are it's alluding to sex.
Honest opinion on Andrew Tate. I think he is a fucking fat W.
Hundreds of thousands of people failed to do in 4.5 years what this level just did in 4.5 minutes. That is, to present an environment that is such an overwhelming aura that it forces whoever comes across it to be completely mystified. Never before has someone purposely designed something in the editor to be so overworldly and disconnected from everything that we know as the norm that it can't be placed into any previous category of thing that exists. Outsider Zone stands alone as the only thing to ever be so fucked up that it turns you gay. So gay in fact that there has been reports by scientists that playing this level for just 5 minutes can earn you 6 new world records in the same-sex sloppy toppy Olympics. That's just how powerful this level is, hence why it's here in the description, which would have been a very useful disclaimer if I knew how to read. I've sucked a lot of dick. Over the years, people have been attempting in vain to achieve this level of deep immersion, and every time someone does it, it somehow gets even more embarrassing. If you look over at any single corner of the game's servers, you can find an abundant supply of middle schoolers that repeatedly announce to the world in earnest that they made the greatest and most poignant level ever, with 50 million signs pointing to it about how fucking cool it is, and you open it up just to find out that it's Five Nights at Freddy's porn combined with the alphabet shuffle. The number one way to spot someone who's trying too hard to be clever and edgy is when they do this bullshit move when they write some extremely vague, spooky sounding words out of wonky lines over a minimalist black and white plane that goes red and then suddenly transforms into save as from the dedicated peaceful rip-off section of Wish, like you're being mugged by some guy who lives in the traveling circus and speaks exclusively in corny riddles. This should be an oddly specific example, but it's not, because there are hundreds of levels that look just like this. You gotta remember, you must never underestimate the amount of suburban teenagers out there suffering with terminal fart overdose disease. These people have mastered the art of trying too hard, and meanwhile they're falling over each other trying to see who can be the most groundbreakingly edgy. This guy made them all look like a bunch of chumps just by purposely making a level which appears like it was put through 10 spins in the washing machine. What you're seeing here is not accidental. He's been working on this style of building for a couple of years, and this look is actually extremely difficult to get right. This thing took nearly 150,000 objects to make, which for those in the crowd that aren't familiar with numbers is a fuckload. Looking at the final product, you would think this was made on a broken calculator or something, but if you turn off preview mode, you'll actually find out that it's made out of sprinkles. I click on an object and now I'm on layer 90. This doesn't have this many objects because it's poorly optimized, it's actually because there's 15 layers of assorted polygons on the screen at all times. And that doesn't even take into account the fact that this part has a real life galaxy on it with around 1 billion stars that are now extremely dead. Just like the classics that made psychedelia what it is today. It's a masterwork taken through a layer of amateurism to once again return to mastery. And unlike chumps like Andy Warhol, this dude didn't even need to take drugs, except for these ones that don't count. I told you that big dumb story earlier because this is a level that I've been fascinated about for a very long time. For many years I've dedicated my life studying it from front to back, inspecting every inch to find out what it hides. When it was released, this thing successfully took command over every aspect of my existence and has been ever since it came out 6 months ago. They played this thing completely blind with no prior knowledge or expectations of what was to come, and now I'm in a psych ward due to the impact left on my brain. One day at 2 in the morning while popping melatonin like the Swedish fish, I was manually searching through levels like a moron and just happened to stumble upon this at random chance. This is the type of level that you can only find through getting impossibly lucky in the recent section. Less than 1,000 likes and 18,000 downloads. For reference, that's less than half of what the average rated level has and 25 times less than what Buckle Your Pants has, which according to RobTop is equally as good as this. Potentially less people will ever play this level than this video talking about it. It may only be a few months old, but it's only a matter of time before this level vanishes into nothingness, never to be seen again. The clock is ticking for what is by far the best level of the year, and for something this good, it's a real shame that the only person who ever bothered to pay close attention to it is a no-life scumbag loser who spends 5 hours a day lying face down on the carpet because they're too lazy to be lazy correctly. Looking up the level on YouTube finds you a couple of low-quality showcases and a short let's play by some Russian dude, and after that you're left stranded with this guy, and that's just not right. When it comes to making art that's quite out there and strange, there's an expectation that there's going to be a drop in reception no matter what, whether that be from a quality that most people dislike such as abrasiveness or just from flat out disgust. You can't please everybody, especially when you're making what it looks like to most people as someone throwing eggs at a keyboard from a 3 meters distance. From the few responses I've seen for this level, it seems that people don't really know how to feel about it. The group of people who appear to be most enthusiastic about the project appear to be the occasional long-time creating veteran who stumbled upon it through the same weird lottery that I did. Another group of the level's fans seem to think that this level was the product of something whose genesis was non-human, ranging from things like being a spontaneously inspired product from a wild LSD trip, or in the case of the loud Russian guy, a neural network created specifically for this level. Much like many other all-time greats, explaining one's spider is difficult without including some type of futuristic mind-altering substance. In order to merely exist, this level required both a creative breakthrough and dozens of hours of painful trial and error, and all of that effort for a pittance. A reception that started out weak to begin with and is slowed to such a crawl that it's only a few moments away from being taken away through the sands of time, that turns into an ever-expansive desert that leads into an everlasting ocean, never to be seen again, washed up on the shore as a geometry-dash level that time forgot, reduced to becoming one of the uncountable unknown victims from the most ruthless serial killer in all of history, shoved without grace into the envisionable pile of bodies being burned. It's a fate that you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy, yet it's what will turn out to be the final resting place for the vast majority of everyone that'll ever be born on this planet and everything they've ever loved. But not all of it. Not if we do something about it. Not if we all make an effort to spread the outsider zone far and wide, giving its ghost what it should have deserved by resurrecting it once and for all. This level broke my brain, and to this very day I haven't seen anything else like it.